Welcome to Love Letters Live. And today's guest is someone so interesting. And this is going to be a slightly different story than usual, I think, although I'm not the boss, so we'll see. I want to introduce Peter Katcoff, who is the founder, and Peter, you can tell me if I've got this right, of the Marin Philosophical Society. Is that right?
Not quite. I'm not that old. I'm the current president of the Marin Philosophical Society.
Okay.
It was established in 1987.
That's an unusual thing for today in modern life because, okay, can we start Philosophical Society? Let's start with what I think is the unmanageable task of defining philosophy. You want to take a stab at it?
Well, one simple way to do it, and some of our members agree with this, is thinking about thinking.
Okay, and that's definite. That's kind of the shortest. That's the trimmest, because we go from traditional, and I mean ancient philosophies, which are we go from the very complicated and the very complicated mathematically to the more intuitive, simple view of things, and the difference between objective and subjective, and how do we know what we know, but I like thinking about thinking. Okay. And because recreational thinking is so much fun anyway, isn't it? Yes. And in talking to you before, I kind of want to get right to this because it touches all our lives, which is the effect that modern technology, and I'm thinking that you were particularly interested in how email and our communications, our modern communications, has had an impact and changed our lives. Is that kind of correct?
Yes, I'm interested and have been for quite some time in the effect that what I call computer-mediated communications has on relationships.
Okay.
When I say relationships, I'm talking about not just simply me talking to you or out in the world, but maybe most importantly and critically, my relationships with myself.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I say that is because I don't know, it's probably been 20, 25 years now. I kind of got onto this as an academic. I had a period of my life where I was an academic, and I was working.
What were you doing as an academic?
Well, I was teaching, and I was teaching some business subjects, organization development at the University of San Francisco. And one day the boss came up to me and he says, "Peter, you've taught 6 courses now, but in a graduate program there. And, we have things called accreditation, and our graduate instructors really need to have a few more letters after their name." So they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. And that was a doctorate in education.
Oh,
and they said they'd pay for it if I could get into it.
Okay, I forgot about that. I did know that. Yes.
Yeah. So the short version of this is I did that, and it took a while because I had to come up with a topic to study that I had passion for, and I was assured that I would need to have that to get through this darn thing. Okay. And I came up with what I just said, and I called it Education's Latent Challenge. That is, for those people that are old enough, or even if they teach it now, to do a little photography in something called a dark room, and they have chemicals in the dark room. The essence of it is you have what's called a latent image on a piece of photographic paper that you put in chemicals, and that image becomes apparent. So education's latent challenge, it's there below the surface, but you don't see it. And so I was finishing up this doctorate curriculum, and I needed 2 units. And I looked around and said, my gosh, there aren't too many 2-unit courses in this thing. And there was one called The Spirituality of Education. I didn't know what that meant. So I called up the instructor, and she said, and this is someone who goes around to all kinds of universities and educational institutions around the country, and maybe even beyond, and talks about something. She says, well, normally we have the role of the teacher, and we have the role of a textbook. But what we don't have is the voice of the student in the classroom. And I said, oh, that's interesting.
Really?
And so I asked her, I said, well, what about the voice of technology? And she said, what are you talking about? And I told her, and she says, I want you in my class. So the point being in that is that technology, first of all, is not neutral. And it's thought at very broadly as being something neutral. You can do what you want with it.
And it can do what it wants with you.
Well, that's just it. When I use a fork, to eat, this is a form of technology.
Right.
I could nourish myself, or I could stab myself with that fork.
Yes, yes.
But it's not neutral, because I have to no longer gather food with my hands before these implements were designed. I have to conform to the technology to use it.
Well, if you want to get invited back, you do, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
so it's a very simple way of saying that it does have an effect on people. And it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but like medicine, a drug which is prescribed for you for a particular ailment, usually you get a little bit, take these many pills, and then you've got this insert in the bottle or the package that's probably 6 pages of 2-point type with a lot of legalese on it.
Right. Yes.
Side effects.
Yes.
So I use that as an analogy to say, you need to know the side effects of this stuff.
Okay.
That is the use of technology.
And you're going to tell us about that.
Well, I can make some suggestions, some observations, and where do you want to go with this?
Well, what you said about how it's changed. I mean, it's so clear. It seems to me it's so clear how it's changed society. It's changed etiquette. It's flush down the toilet, in my opinion. And it's changed a lot of things. It's changed how quickly we think. It's changed how we skip over things that we don't think about. So talk about that. And then talk about, you said you were interested in how it's changed you. In other words, how it changes us personally. Why don't you do that? I have a feeling we're all going to relate to that.
Okay, what I'm suggesting is that too much use of this of communicating with that's communication that is electronically mediated will affect and has affected my relations with myself. And here's the reason why. I believe, and I think I could substantiate this, that the only real way I know myself is an authentic communion with an other, capital O, other. Like right now, I'm talking to an image of you, and I'm seeing an image of me. Do you remember the famous painting by René Magritte? It shows a picture of a smoking pipe, and underneath it says, "Cela ce n'est pas une pipe." So it means this is not a pipe. And you look at it, I saw that thing and I think, what on earth does he mean? And of course, what he means is this is not the real thing. It's a representation. So when I talk to you authentically, face to face and from the heart and so forth and so on, then there's nuances there. There's all kinds of aspects to verbal, nonverbal communications, the different senses involved, which you don't even realize.
You touched on something that I wonder if other people are going to relate to. When I call a friend and I get an answering machine, it says, you've reached Laura Silverman. And I wanted to scream, no, I haven't.
That's a great example.
That's all I want to say about that.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I have.
Well, you haven't. And as a matter of fact, I think some enlightened people that have these machines will put the recording on it as you're reaching the home office of, or this is the answering machine of, or something like that.
Yes. I like that better. Okay, well, go ahead. So
anyway, so if this is true, that the only way I really get to know myself is in authentic communion with another, I got onto the notion that, well, wait a minute, if I'm mediated by either voice, telephone, or by video or something like that, I'm really not authentically in communion with another. There was a book I read a number of years ago, and it talked about it was called something like The Spirituality of Cyberspace. And it was a series of interviews done with people that are certified spiritual people, church leaders, or bodhisattvas, or whatever. And the person that was being interviewed at the end ran a state-of-the-art video conferencing system, much as we're doing here, but much more sophisticated. This thing would follow you around the room. It had surround sound and all of that. And the interviewer asked this person, who happened to be from India, by the way, well, this is just like real life, isn't it? And he answered, oh no. What do you mean by that? What's missing? Prana.
What is missing?
Prana, life force.
Uh-huh.
That's what's missing.
Yes.
And look at it this way too. When I'm talking like this, I'm talking to a mirror of myself. I'm not talking to you, a mirror of myself. I hear your voice and I respond to it. But really what I'm doing is interpreting the vision, what I see, what I hear, according to my own background up until this moment. I'm not really changing. It can't get through. I have a background in telecommunications and on the technical side. And my elevator speech, given that, goes like this. Have you ever been on the telephone with somebody you're close to? Maybe a family member, could be a boss. And you get to a point in the conversation, you say, I think we better talk about this face to face.
Oh, yes. Yes.
What's going on there? What's going on there is something like this. Can you lift up your telephone when it's pointed at that symphony orchestra and get that full experience of the symphony orchestra? What happens when you have music on your telephone? You hear it all the time. It's kind of tinny, isn't it? It doesn't sound real. So you buy yourself a really high quality music system, sound system, and you could pay tens of thousands of dollars to get 1% more performance out of that thing. Is it going to be real up there? No, it's not the same thing and never will be. It can get close, it can replicate it, but this is not a pipe.
Well, you feel that. I mean, I feel that. Maybe you do too. The only thing really missing, and now I'm talking 2.5 years of pandemic, where we're really not allowed to be with people, and we can't touch, and we can't hug, and we can't kiss, and I feel it physically. I feel I want an armful. I want an armful of my friends. I want to be able to throw my arms around actual people. And that's missing. And I just wonder, because this seems to have taken the place kind of for me and for a lot of people, I think, kind of successfully as a way to visit. All that you say is true, but it's what we've got.
I think that this is a wonderful, wonderful medium to use when it's looked at correctly, and that is to maintain existing relationships.
Yes.
Not so much to form new ones, because it's not quite real, but it can serve, and it does serve very valuably, to maintain existing ones, to keep people in a more shallow, superficial contact or connection with each other.
What do you think?
I'm not a Luddite. I'm not anti-technology. I'm for technology, but in the way of using it in the service of human endeavors, rather not use it using me, which it will do.
Yes. Well, so I feel exactly the same about what you're saying, about using it properly. What do you think has happened you hear a lot about this, about children who spend all their time on their devices, can't really communicate with people anymore. And do you think this is true?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I'll put a little plug in for some of the stuff we're doing in a new initiative in the Marin Philosophical Society.
Okay.
We have just embarked on an initiative for an philosophical essay contest for high school seniors.
Oh, wonderful. I saw that. Yes.
And the idea is to encourage critical thinking.
Now, do you want to define critical thinking for people right now? Because there are very many levels of it.
Yes, I would say, and you're right, I would say it can get very, very deep, but anything that is beyond the superficial. You might recall that you might have read the book by Kahneman that talked about fast thinking and slow thinking. You might be familiar with that book.
No, but I'd like to.
Oh, it's a must read.
That's a big
bestseller for a lot of years.
Pardon me?
And most of the time, and aided and abetted by technology, we have to react. We are increasingly losing the ability to respond.
And,
So
yet,
I would say,
and yet we are faced with the demand to respond instantly. When somebody sends you a text, if you don't answer it in 2.5 minutes, you get a phone call or something saying, "Didn't you get my text?"
okay, so here's an example. That's a great example. And here's an example of how
they're angry. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, this is an example of how our culture, our very culture, not just here in our city, but worldwide, has been changed and affected by this medium.
Because of
technology.
Expectations?
Pardon?
Because of expectations?
No, it's because of the instantaneous. You can push a button, right, and change everything. You don't like something, I don't like you. I could get you out of this picture right away.
Oh yeah.
Now, why is that important? Because the way that I get along with human beings, and we've got some stuff going on in the world that have got to do with, it could be wars or whatever it has to be, and people against people. Well, how do you address that? Because we're talking about life and death stuff. Well, critical thinking could be the ability, just simply the ability to slow down and pause and absorb what's being said, and having the ability to think about it a bit, and maybe just be open to other points of view. And we could go on for a long time on this, but I see you're nodding in agreement and identification.
Yes, the other thing that with this kind of communication, this technological communication, I noticed early on was really disturbing that I'd sent something to a friend, and I said something, and I was being kind of glib. I thought I was making a joke, and she took it seriously, and she was so upset that I could say such a thing. She couldn't hear the tone of my voice.
Janet, when you were talking to your friend, were you talking directly to her over?
No, we were emailing.
Emailing. Oh,
yes. I'm sorry. So there was no way of. Now they've got all these, emoticons and little things you can add to help put your emotional tone back in. But isn't that kind of a pity that we can't just do that directly?
Well, again, this is the price you pay for being able to do what we're doing now. You tuned in to our last Monday. We had an event for the Marin Philosophical Society.
Yes.
And I was just blown away by one person who tuned in from the country of Crete. Crete, actually, it's not a country; it's an island belonging to Greece. And I think that'll set a record that I didn't even know we would have to set. I mean, I was just, because she was a friend of the speaker.
Yes.
And we're able to talk just like we're talking right now, and except for the fact that she said, I'm coming from Crete, would not have known the difference. You're right here.
And something, there used to be, I still feel that there is something comforting, or was, when you would call a friend on the telephone, and I'm talking 1948, 1952, you call a friend on the telephone, and you knew when they picked up, you knew exactly where they were standing in their house, because you knew where their telephone was. You knew a lot of things. And now location does not matter. There's a positive and a negative for that. Like you say, you can talk to somebody in Crete like they're next door, but there's not the intimacy of knowing location like we used to.
You bring up a very good point. This kind of communication is really all about efficiency.
Yes, that's right.
As opposed to effectiveness. And what you just said generated a thought in my mind, and that is, in the name of efficiency, kind of a business type of thing, when you have a lot of remote, and because of COVID, it really accelerated the remote work type situation. Sure. But when you have that, think about what's missing. You're going to go to a business meeting. You have to drive a car, usually park it in the garage, go through a lobby, go into an elevator, go into an office, maybe wait for a while, be asked to come into a room. And there's a whole kind of a ritual around this. And that's not there anymore. You're just in the meeting. There's something missing there.
Do you miss that ritual yourself?
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, but it's not a conscious thing. I experienced that in the way similar to what you said a minute ago. You can't put your arms around it. Yeah. That doesn't real. The prana is missing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
This is a huge. I don't know whether that's a huge problem or not, but if I may, it segues directly into letter writing, which I am a real fan of. And well, you must have written letters when you were young, because we're about the same age and we didn't have, you were a letter writer?
I have used handwriting. I remember my grades in grammar school and cursive writing were very good until around the fourth grade. They went south.
Why?
Dramatically.
Any reason?
I'm sure there was, but I couldn't tell you why.
Okay.
I've never really spent time speculating around it, and I have to admit that when it came time to that I would have to use cursive writing, for example, to get admitted to that doctoral program I talked about earlier, I demurred. I said, Blue Book? I haven't seen a Blue Book in 30 years. How about my using word processing? And he looked at me like, what are you talking about? Because this fellow was older than both of us, all right? And he was they think they call him emeritus, retired professor.
Yeah.
And I said something about, well, we're moving into this age and it's kind of nice to belong to an institution that's using the most modern things, whatever I was saying. And he said, oh, okay, you could do that.
Well, handwriting is huge. I mean, I think, first of all, when you do write a letter in your handwriting, and people sometimes say to me, well, my handwriting's so bad. No such thing. It's yours. I did have one friend who wrote me a lovely, wonderful letter of thanks for something. And his handwriting was, I think I could pretty much decipher anything at this stage of my life. No, I couldn't make out one letter of this man's scrawl. What he did was he typed the same message, the same letter, and included it in the envelope. Which I thought was just brilliant of him. And, he knew to send something in his hand. But, when you write letters, when you actually write a letter and send it, people feel, it seems, so extra valued. And they say, oh, that you took the time to write this by hand. Handwriting, they're not teaching, I understand they're not teaching cursive handwriting anymore in school. And I must say, when my granddaughter, she was 7 and she signed something I started screaming, you've got cursive. I was so excited. But one woman who was a guest on Love Letters many years ago was very distressed because her son was not learning handwriting in school. And she wanted him to learn cursive handwriting. He was in the first grade and he just refused. He was absolutely not interested. And she tried to make a case for it. And he said, boring. She finally said to him, if you learn cursive, you will be able to read the secret thoughts of grown-ups.
Ooh.
That kid was on board.
I like it.
Yeah. But there's a lot even to be lost from that. Now when we get packages, we have to sign on those tablets for it. And it turns our handwriting into something that's could only be done by a maniac. It's got nothing to do, but it's also made a real difference, apparently, from a handwriting analyst I know in court. You can't, handwriting used to be a very valuable tool in solving crimes. And with all this technological way of communicating, that's gone, apparently.
I like to use the term, it flattens the experience.
Oh, yeah.
So and as you talk, I hadn't thought about this before, but as you talk, what's coming up for me is seeing an original Van Gogh painting with its textures that you could see, and a print of the same painting, which is a flattened experience. And my subjective experience of the print, which is very nice to look at. I've got a print of a Klimt in my bedroom. It's a lovely thing, but it's just you can't put your arms around it.
Right.
It's what you were saying, and I think handwriting is that. It's a creative expression of the author, of the person that's doing it.
Yeah.
And it's not just cursive writing, it's the arts in general that are being taken out of our education system, aren't they?
I guess that's true, yes. And for what? What is it being exchanged for? In other words, what are we gaining, in your view, here?
Well, I once, this brings up a story now. in my view, I don't think we're gaining anything. We're losing something very important, and what we're losing is our humanity, frankly. And I could segue now into this stuff called artificial intelligence. Because and this is something which is lurking latently for all of us. And again, it could be ultimately beneficial or ultimately destroy us as a race. It really, really could.
Yes.
With super artificial intelligence, the next generations and so forth, which is probably anywhere from 5, maybe sooner, maybe 10 years away, something like that, comes in. What little experience we've had right now, for example, spell check. Okay?
Oh,
there's an example right there. That's just trivial stuff.
well, not only that, it's so irritating. Try to say something in your mess. I happen to use, email like a real letter. And I don't see email as a substitute for a letter, by the way. I see email as a very slow telephone conversation. You say something and then you wait and the person responds. And that's great. But I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, yes, well, you go ahead what you were saying. I just let
me take up. And I'm talking about artificial intelligence that will in effect mold your behavior, including your thinking.
Okay, now that's crucial. That's big. How does it do that?
And there are signs of that today. There was one of those video games. I can't remember the name of it offhand. Came out a couple of years ago. It was very popular, and a lot of people bought it and so forth. And lots of money were made by the company, the designers, and the stores, and everybody up and down that chain. But what happened very quickly, like within 48 hours or something like that, is that they took on sponsors. You walk down the street and you look for clues in this game, and subtly it'll guide you into going into this particular store.
Right.
You don't even know that.
Yeah.
So and multiply that by 100 about it affecting your thinking and what you're doing and your actions and so forth and so on. And the essence of it is that your thoughts and your actions as a human being no longer emanate from who you are inside. They're responding, or in this case, reacting to somebody else's menu on the outside. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, you have a computer program. This is a minor example of how to do art, or how to write prose.
Yes.
And what you have is a series of menus that were designed probably not by an artist or an author, but probably by a systems designer. And maybe in consultation with those other people. But they gave you something called a menu. And you get to pick off somebody else's menu what you want to create.
Okay, so that's tantamount to buying, no disrespect, a Hallmark card to express yourself. You're counting on somebody else's expression.
Yeah.
To mimic your. But what about, I think we've all been, I was at an outdoor concert once, and with one of my daughters was, a musician was performing, and there were a lot of people sitting in this great big outdoors. And my other daughter looked around and she looked at me. She said, "Look at this." She said, "Everyone is on a device. No one was present." And, you find that when you're, I don't know how you react to this. You find that when you're with friends. And I think we're a little bit past this now, maybe, but I remember when cell phones first came out, I was in a restaurant and I was sitting with a friend, and there was a man behind me a couple of tables outdoors on his cell phone talking at a decibel level that I think is illegal. He was so loud, and he wanted to be very important, and he wanted the people around him to know how important he was. And it was clear, I'm indispensable. I finally turned around and I looked at him and I said, "Use your indoor voice." And he kind of was caught short. He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He didn't realize it.
Exactly. That's a great example.
You have lunch with a friend, and I love this one. So I don't bring my cell phone out when I'm having lunch with a friend. I don't take it with me when I go on walks. I don't use it like most people do, I don't think. And So I'm talking to somebody and whatever we're saying, and the person is looking at the, I said, will you turn the thing off? Yes, they turn the thing off, but they put it on, they put it in their purse or somewhere where they can still tell if they're being summoned because they're still looking at it. What do you do about that?
Well, if it depends on the age and the maturity and the openness that person has. But I'd like to talk a little bit and give you a little humorous vignette here. As you talked about the importance of the person and they're talking on the phone, I'm reminded that way long ago, I was going down the road of the street in Beverly Hills, California, where I was working there at the time. And of course, there's entertainment industry and movie moguls and lots of egos. And the thing at those times was a car telephone. I mean, very few people.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So it turns out that there were examples of people going down the street with a car, not the telephone, just the receiver and the cord in their ear, so that they were appearing to be very busy and very involved.
I know, isn't that? I had lunch with a friend many years ago when cell phones first came out. And and I hadn't seen him in about 6 months. He lived in another city. He was a very close friend. We met at a restaurant and we were sitting there and his cell phone was on the table. I'd never seen anyone do that before, but anyway, his cell phone was on the table and it rang and he said, "Oh, I have to take this." Oh. And he went outside. Oh, no, I said, "You can't talk on that inside a restaurant, not allowed." And he said, "Oh, okay." I thought he was going to hang up. He went outside. He came back 20 minutes later. I'd been sitting in this restaurant by myself, 20 minutes. He's outside. He finally comes back and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I got 3 other calls I needed to take." Okay, sits down and he puts the phone down, still face up. And I looked at him. I mean, the devil made me do it. I said, "Darling, if you're expecting a kidney, by all means, you keep that thing on." And he said, "Oh, okay." And he turned it off and we had a lovely lunch. People need to feel important and they need to feel attractive and they need to feel like they mean something to somebody, which is why I like to have people write love letters because you have the power to do that with a letter. Okay, I'm going to ask you now because it's time for me to ask that. And I always do. If you were to write a love letter right now to somebody, and the love letter definition is broad, it's thank you notes, it's apologies, it's lust, it's friendship, it's memories, anything at all. To whom would you write it right now?
Probably to myself.
Pardon me?
Probably to myself.
Good for you. Okay, that's interesting. I like when people do that. What would you say?
I would like to put my spiritual arms around myself as a human being.
Yes.
And this is my relationship with myself, because I realize that I will project that out into my other relationships with other people and into the world in general.
True enough. You feel good about yourself.
And I cannot control. I have nothing to say about how you or anybody else responds or reacts to my actions. That's out of my, once I let them go, that's what happens. And that of course ties into your email communications too, because you're not communicating with somebody else. They're interpreting your writing in that email based on their history and how they view those particular words and sentences. But and misunderstandings can happen all the time. So my love letter would be to myself as a human being, and sometimes it's a grudging.
Dear Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, sometimes it's a grudging acceptance of me and all my warts, if you want, or foibles. But to the extent I can accept and at times love who I am, warts and all. There used to be this guy called Leo Buscaglia who called himself the love professor. You remember him? I remember him.
Yes, I do.
And he would say his name, and I knew he was in love with himself. My name is Leo Buscaglia.
Let me ask you something, though. When you write this letter, you're talking in kind of general terms. Will you specify to yourself the things that you really do love about yourself and that you admire yourself for? Specify.
It's not what I normally do. I can do it.
It's
I can
really
do
valuable.
it. And one thing I would say is that there was a time, well, it was a while ago now, but I would never have agreed to what we're doing right this minute.
Why?
Um, I was terrified. I was in sales and I was terrified of talking before a group. Can you believe that?
I guess so, but so you're having a whale of a time though, right now?
Now, oh,
I know I am.
it's almost real.
Yes, there you go. There's something about writing a letter filled with specifics that is so powerful to receive, whether you write it to somebody else or to yourself, and you'll mail it to yourself, right? You put it in an envelope, stamp it, and stick it in the mailbox and wait for it to come to your house, correct?
I actually have done that. I was at the southernmost mailbox in the world, down in Tierra del Fuego. This actually happened.
Okay.
And you're encouraged to mail something to yourself, and I did.
Good.
I never received it, but what the heck? But I did. But I did mailed it.
You'll receive this one, I'm sure, and I think you're going to find, and I want you to get in touch with me. Let me know if you would. You'll find that the you who wrote the letter and the Peter Katcoff sitting there reading it, two different people.
I do have some experience that now I'm relating to it. When I worked in the corporate world, and I would take like 3-week vacations, and I'd go out to foreign places, and I'd write a series of draft notes, which were, and in those days we didn't have word processing. We had people called administrative clerks that would type up our letters and for our signature when we get back. And I'd write these letters. There were a lot of them, and I'd write them quickly. And I'd come back 3 weeks later and look at them, and I wondered, who wrote that?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It came from a different place. Sometimes I don't know what I know until I say what I say, or I write what I write.
Good for you. Okay, well, isn't that the point? That is such a good lesson. That's a wonderful, strong platform on which to end. Although I hate to end, it's so much fun talking to you. But I want to thank you for doing this with me. And before we say goodbye, I just want to point out one more thing that you said that I think is so important. And that is, you said, once you do it, you're done. You're talking about a message out, and once you do it, the same is true with a love letter. Once you slip it into that mailbox, you're finished. You don't get to call the person later and say, well, did you get my letter? And what did you think? You're done. It's a gift and you're finished. And,
yes.
And what do you get to expect in return? Nothing. You've sent a gift. And if you're doing it for some kind of expectation and something in return, I think you've missed the point. For a love letter, I mean, there are letters where you do need it. So I like that you made that point.
Philosophically, it's all about life is in the giving.
100%. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
That is the communications that needs to be. It's a heart to heart, human to human type of thing.
Okay, that's even a better platform on which to end so many lessons. I just thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad we met. And as far as you can't forge personal relationships this way, sometimes you can.
It's certainly a start.
I mean, I think it feels like we have. So if there's some other subject that you'd like to talk about on Love Letters Live, will you come back?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
And I would like to encourage people who if anybody has been interested in what we're talking about, the Marin Philosophical Society is not just about philosophy in that sense. It's about science, and it's about art, it's about literature, and it's not just thinking about thinking.
No, it isn't. On the other hand, I was there as a guest recently because we just met and I learned about, and your speaker talked about walking. And you might, who would think that would fall into any level of philosophy? So much to it. I haven't stopped thinking about all the ramifications of this walking. It was great. Yes. So I would say to people, 100%, join up. You want to give your website, please?
There is a website. It's not current, but we're looking for somebody that can maintain this at a reasonable price, because we're not a for-profit thing, but It's the Marin Philosophical Society. You can get it, .com, and we're there, and you'll see us and you'll see me.
Okay, but that's how people can join if they want.
they can do that, or what you'll see is information on how you can contact us. Please do.
Okay, thank you. I encourage people to do it. It was so interesting. Okay, I'll be back and I'll talk to you later, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet.
So I'm just going to say goodbye for now.
Bye for now.